morning, it is 6 minutes past 7. Now, for some people during this crisis, boredom, stress or anxiety might lead to an extra glass of wine or a few more cans of beer to calm the nerves or just make the day a bit more interesting. A recent survey by Nielsen Tracking shows that online sales of alcohol has increased by almost 300%. New research from Alcohol Change UK suggests 1 in 5 people say that they are drinking more. Now, one man who knows how dangerous that extra glass can be whilst at home is Sam Thomas, who, having recently become sober following extensive detoxing, is now isolating himself to try and stay off the booze. Here's a little bit of his story.
At the time, I kind of knew I was drinking a little bit too much, but for me, it was very much drinking just at home whilst doing work, because I worked for myself, so it was kind of the ideal sort of environment and all the main ingredients, if you like, for alcohol dependency to thrive. Obviously, in recent times, I've had to sort of revert back into being in isolation like we all have. And of course, that has had all sorts of different unique challenges that, we're all experiencing. And of course, having to be back in isolation means that I haven't been able to sort of rely on the healthy sort of alternative coping strategies that I've been able to develop over the past few months. So going to the gym. So there's lots of different ways that I've had to sort of adapt and change and just be very flexible. Of course, for people like me, it's particularly difficult because ultimately addiction thrives on isolation. So I'm having to sort of make sure that, I don't relapse. So being very connected to people who are in a similar boat to me is incredibly important.
Sam Thomas, though, a very difficult situation to deal with if you're under pressure and all of that, or you're trying to cope without maybe going to the gym or visiting support networks because they obviously aren't available. Well, at the University of Portsmouth, Dr. Matt Parker is leading a team looking into the issue of whether some of us are drinking just a little bit more than normal. Matt, morning to you.
Good morning, Lou. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks ever so much for your time this morning. So what made you look into this in the first instance then?
So my group's interested in the reason that some people are susceptible to addiction and some of the risk factors that make some people more susceptible to addiction. And obviously during this crisis, as was clear from that very poignant clip you just played, there are certain people either who've been addicted in the past and who are potentially at risk of relapse during this time, but also healthy people potentially that are at risk due to the current crisis that may be at risk of developing addiction. And so we were interested in looking into that.
When this started, did you look at the situation and think, this is going to be inevitable? Because as you said, even people that haven't had an issue in the past might just start punctuating their day with a glass of wine. I know I am. I'm having to stop myself reaching for a gin and tonic at 3:30 on a Monday afternoon. And I would never normally do that, even though really a lot of my routine hasn't changed. So, is anyone unaffected by this?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that the issue is not just, obviously, there is a kind of existential threat associated with the pandemic, of course. People worried, potentially for themselves or for loved ones and so on. So there's a kind of stress associated with that. But it's also this change in routine, like you say. A lot of people are used to, getting up at this time of the day and going off to work and getting home and having a kind of routine to their day. And actually, if that routine involves maybe having a glass of wine at 8 or 9 in the evening, then that's probably fine, right? But I guess the problem is with this is, like you're saying, people are not having a normal schedule. They're perhaps getting up later and they're sitting around doing very little, and actually then things like drinking and bad habits, I guess you could say, often start to manifest.
Tell us more then about the survey that you're conducting and the work that you're doing.
So essentially what we've done is we've set up an online survey, obviously, because we can't do anything face-to-face at this time. And we've sent it out via collaborators all around the world, actually. So from everywhere from the US to Australia, all over Europe and so on. And essentially what we're doing is we're asking people to fill in a questionnaire, which takes about 25 minutes and actually incorporates a lot of information about things like personality characteristics that we know can make some people more at risk of addiction, things like stress reactivity and so on. Then what we're doing is we're asking people to track back to their pre-isolation drinking, and we get them to fill in a fairly detailed kind of diary, and then talk about how much they've been drinking afterwards. And then we're actually following those people up on a weekly basis to see how the isolation is impacting on their drinking.
It's one of the issues here that you're sort of suggesting then that this could lead to an addiction, that people that potentially haven't had a problem in the past could start forming this habit which stays with them beyond lockdown.
Well, that's exactly what we're interested in trying to find out. So at the moment, there's relatively scant data on this looking what we call prospectively. So in other words, taking people in a, I guess, non-addicted state and then seeing how different kinds of situations might lead to that addiction. Obviously, you couldn't look at that in an experiment. That would be horrifically unethical. But we've actually got a situation now where, because of the way that the world is through this isolation, that people essentially are stuck in this situation. So if our theory is correct and that these kinds of, sort of stressful life situations could lead some people potentially to become addicted, we may end up seeing that. Now, obviously, we hope that we don't, but it would be very useful for clinicians in the future to understand more about how certain situations can impact on people in terms of addiction.
If anybody listening to this and wants to take part in the survey, I suppose the important thing to say is you need to be honest, because it's not going to be much point if you're saying, oh, well, I only had one glass and actually you finished the bottle. But how can they get involved, and what's the web address to find out more?
So if people are interested in taking part, the first part of the survey that I mentioned is going to be running for about another week or so after today. And if they go to parker-lab.com, so that's parker-lab.com, then there's lots of information on there.
Lovely. OK, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning, Matt. And stay in touch and let us know how you get on with the findings of it. Dr. Matt Parker, Brain and Behaviour Lab at the University of Portsmouth. That is where he is from. So parker-lab.com if you fancy getting involved in that. And I would love to hear from you as well. Again, no judgment here, because I'm drinking alcohol more than I would do normally. Normally, I wouldn't be touching it during the week. But now it is that change of routine thing, isn't it? And thinking, well, I haven't got to go anywhere. I may as well have a glass of wine, even though it's only 3:30 in the afternoon. 81333, start your message with the word Solent. How has it affected you in terms of your alcohol consumption? Maybe you've gone the other way. Maybe you're thinking, right, I'm not going to have any in the house, because that's the other thing, isn't it? You've got to buy it in the first place and have it there for it to be in temptation's way. 0808 100 3800, that is our phone number this morning. Free to call us.
BBC Radio Solent.